Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can submit that anonymously at asksean.org. So for this video, I've been thinking about the new year and kind of the cultural practice of New Year's resolutions and um, some of the ways in which some of the humorous things about that, the ways in which we notoriously don't follow through or don't sustain them, sustain those commitments and whatnot. And in the midst of that, I've been thinking about some of my own bad habits, actually, and thinking about the ways in which our bad habits have things to teach us. Now, by bad habits, I don't mean that in any kind of judgy way, right? Like I'm not shaming myself here or anything, but we do have categories, right? Like internally, right? Like regardless even of what anyone else thinks, we have things that feel healthier for us or less healthy. They feel more in sync with how we want to live, or in sync with our values, or less in sync. Less congruent. Um, so that's a sense in which I mean bad habits, right? Like a habit that I'm persisting in, that we're persisting in, that's recurring, on kind of on its own, in spite of there being something in me that's like, I really wish I wasn't doing that, or I wish I was doing that differently, or at a different time, or whatever the thing is, right? Because there's all sorts of different bad habits. Some bad habits are things that's like, I don't think it's ever good for me to do this, and yet it's something that I do. Other bad habits can be, there's a time when this actually would be really good for me, but I have a tendency to do it at times that's not good for me. It's not, and that's not supporting other things that are important to me, and whether in terms of goals, values, priorities. Um, so I actually think I think there's a lot that our bad habits can teach us. And I think in terms of, kind of New Year's resolutions and coming into the new year and wanting to make changes, I suspect we might actually get more mileage by paying attention to our bad habits, to our less desirable choices. One of the reasons I think this is that this is an area where we are already mobilized. I mean, that's kind of the jokes about the difficulty sustaining New Year's resolutions is that it's hard to stay mobilized around them, right? Like and a lot of times I think the way that we approach these sorts of things is very shame based. So it's like, oh, I feel so terrible because I like didn't eat healthy over the holidays, and so now I'm gonna go to the gym, and like, but that's like fueled by like a mixture of like maybe some healthy regret, but also potentially some unhealthy regret, some shame, some it's not coming from deep enough, and so then it peters out once sort of that initial painfulness kind of subsides. So the interesting thing about bad habits, right, is that they're notoriously sticky. Like we all have some bad habits that's like, gosh, I've been doing this a long freaking time. And hopefully, for each of us, we're experiencing some progress and working with those and helping those shift. But they have a way of really persisting. And so I don't mean that bad habits have us things to teach in terms of like, well, we should just give in and just like, fine, I'm just going to do the bad thing, or whatever, whatever the bad thing is for me, whatever the thing that's not desirable, that's, not consistent with how I would wish to be living or aspire to be living. So I don't mean we just should resign ourselves and like let it teach us in that sense. But I do mean that like there's something, or not just something, there's multiple things to be curious about here. Like here, I'm actually engaging in a persistence and a consistency that I'm wanting to be able to mobilize in other areas of my life. And so that just that dichotomy in and of itself is very fascinating, right? Like what is it about this particular bad habit, whatever, the habit of the moment that you're looking at is, what is it about this particular bad habit that has such staying power for me. Now, we need to get deeper than, there can be sort of the initial knee jerk like criticisms internally or externally, unfortunately. But, internal criticism, shamey kind of comments of like, well, I'm just, I'm not disciplined enough. And I just, blah, blah, blah. Fill in the blank. You probably have lots of examples for yourself. I've had plenty of my own inside of me and outside of me. So, oh no, I lost my train of thought. In case my brain started thinking about that various unpleasant shame experiences. Where was I going? Yeah, like, so thinking about like what about the stickiness, the staying power, right, of this, like what is it? Like there's something to learn there. There's something to tease out, because if it's staying, if it's persisting, it's tapping into something important. Now, that doesn't mean, okay, well, therefore I have to do this exact thing, right? That's the thing about bad habits. If it was, and I guess that's part of, maybe that's a way of distinguishing between a bad habit and a good habit, is that a good habit is going to feel in sync with our whole system. The thing about bad habits is that it's clearly tapping into something deep because it's persisting, but there's other parts of us that's like, I don't feel great about that. Like, it's maybe taking time away from other things that are important to me, or there's some values conflicts inside of me, or it's hurtful to others, potentially, or so there's all these different things, and so that's part of what it makes it problematic, makes it bad, if you will. Is it's like, I'm not living totally in sync there, and yet there's something about this bad habit, about this persistent behavior, whether we classify this all the way into a category of addiction, or sort of the broad category of compulsive behaviors, which I think I've talked about before here on the channel. Whatever we're thinking about as far as all that, like, there's something that this is tapping into in me, or I wouldn't keep doing it, right? Because just doing sort of the shamey, like, oh, I just don't have enough discipline. Well, I may have some struggles around discipline, right? But the shaming criticism is sort of a bit of a cop-out. Like, that's not looking deep enough, right? That's not really examining, like, what is it about this that my system keeps going back to it? That I'm, like, in some cases, like, very consistently day after day, like, whether it's a little thing or a big thing, right? Like, and we all have things like this, because, none of us is living totally in sync. None of us is living totally healthily. So yeah, so like there's so much richness here to tease out. But first step, as I often talk about, is we've got to be able to, push back against the shame, right? Like, I need to be able to look at this with the curious eye and ear, with a non-criticizing, you can have a critical, in the sense of, I want to think critically, like, not critical as in criticizing, but I want to think intelligently. I want to examine this. I want to tease it apart, right? Like, I want to make sense of, like, what are the elements in this bad habit that are trying to do something for me and yet aren't the best option, because if it was the best option, it would feel in sync with the rest of my system and it would work with my life as a whole. But, like, what are these elements that are getting at something, and what are the elements that are just kind of extraneous? That's like, oh, that actually isn't significant, and I could pull that off and, like, remove that easily, and it doesn't come back, right? Like, we want to get as close to the core, and then ultimately to, like, what's that sort of that pure need or longing that's driving the bad habit. And by pure, I mean, like, we've gotten down enough layers kind of in our psyche that it's like, it's no longer diluted by by our junk, by our wounding. Like, it's not seeking it. Like, by pure, I guess, I mean, we get down to this level where it's like, it's a desire, a longing, a need that like, isn't seeking anything yucky or unhealthy. Like, it's Hold on. My computer's going to overheat. I am getting a new computer soon. And then that won't be happening, which will be nice. All right, now I'm back. I should have just turned that warning thing off. Any rate, so little adventures in technology. So I was thinking of like a very small example to kind of play with here, to kind of illustrate this. So I am trying to kind of bring greater health and healing to my mornings. And this is something I've been working on a long time, and I'll very well maybe working on it the rest of my life, as I've many things that I'll be working on. So I can have like, I've had various patterns and habits of like getting out of bed and like immediately like checking email or getting online, like to check news or any number of kinds of things. And it's like that's kind of gone through various permutations over the years as I've been working with myself and in my own counseling and trying to tease out what this is about. And I think some of it, I mean, of course, childhood stuff, right? Like that's where our templates come from. And for me, I think there's some dynamics of like ways that I was very parentified as a child, and so I kind of felt like the only adult in the house in a lot of ways, and so yeah, so there's just like there's this pairing from kind of earlier in my life of like I got to get up and be responsible, and I got to get up and be productive and take care of things because otherwise things won't happen. Otherwise, like I won't eat lunch that day, for example. So there's baggage in there, and I'm still kind of trying to tease out like what of that is still kind of showing up here in the present. There's something about like, wanting something, I don't know, to look forward to, or something like, I think there's some things that tie into like some loneliness, kind of in my history that's associated with mornings. Again, some of that's childhood stuff. There's this element of like wanting to do something, wanting to feel productive somehow. Like this is very much a thing I'm still teasing out, right? So it's like that's why I'm kind of playing with sort of bits and pieces here, little threads. I'm not gonna solve this here on this video. So, but one of the things I'm trying, there's several things actually that I've been playing with here recently. Like I'm pretty technically skilled. I've got programming experience and my background, and in my present, I was doing some programming over the weekend, and so I have an Android phone, which is more amenable to customizing and programming and whatnot. And so I've been doing some things like with scripting some stuff where like I plug in my phone to charge it after getting out of bed, and it starts playing a couple of select pieces of music that I just find to be particularly beautiful. And I have it like, there's some audio sequences of like, basically saying some kind words to myself, through my phone. And so these are a couple of things, right? Like that it's like I'm playing around with like how do I shift the environment of my morning such that that's just trying to get at whatever these various impulses are and these various kind of mixed habits, bad habits in my mornings are about. And one of the most recent things that I'm trying is I've been thinking about, and partly because I was talking with a client about this, but we're talking about beauty and engaging with art. And I was like, I wonder what it would be like for me if I got up in the morning and I don't try to like, not trying to change the impulse to grab my phone, because I need to at least handle my phone to plug it in to charge it. Although I've been playing with ways of automating that. But the tricky thing there, I mean, just a little aside about me, I like having my phone by my bed because I sometimes will audio record my dreams because I do processing about my dreams. I find that very fruitful in my development. So yeah, so it's tricky, right? Like in some ways it's not good to have our phones by our beds. I'm good about not reading or looking at my phone in bed. Like that's a boundary I've thankfully been able to hold. I know that's a hard one for many folks. For me, I've been able to hold that boundary, but so at any rate, but it's like, okay, I at least with my current way of doing things, unless I'm gonna get a separate recorder to have by my bed to be able to record, dreams that feel important to me. So my phone's gonna be there, so I need to at least handle it, unlock it, plug it in, charge it. And so in that, there's still that impulse of like, oh, I want to check email, because this is tapping into something that I haven't totally sorted out, right? And so I'm keep playing with, what's the deal with this bad habit and whatnot. And so something that I'm trying out is there's this daily art app. I think that's called literally daily art. And I can set it to like give me a notification, for like early in the morning, and it will show me one piece of art and give me a little bio. And so I'm just trying this out. What is this like to like engage with that? And this is an experiment, right? I'm trying to see, does that touch something? I am enjoying it. Like the art is beautiful, and it's interesting to read a little something. It's also it's a light lift in the sense that like there's no pressure on it. If I don't remember anything, it's no big deal, right? Like so I like that about it. Um, and I'm trying to see if over time does this lessen sort of that inclination to also check my email. It seems like it does a bit. Yeah, I'm not. I don't think this thing itself is going to be enough to totally address whatever that's about. Um, but it is interrupting things. It's giving me something beautiful to engage with. Um, it's giving me a little thing to do, right, which scratches some kind of itch there, right? Um, and it's not super long and involved, and it doesn't really require anything of me ultimately, other than I'm just looking at it, and I like to look at it. Like I'm finding like, oh, that's a fun thing to look forward to. Um, so it's just an example, right? It's this like it seems like just a small thing, right? My mornings, what's the big deal? But like any place in our life where we're not living in sync, where we're not like you know like living in a way that like nourishes and works for our whole system, right? Like that affects the rest of the day, like even these little moments, like nothing. What I want to say, like it all matters, I guess is what I want to say. It all matters. And so um and it and like I said, I mean, this I know the mornings like are complicated for me. Like they tie into a number of different things in my history, and I haven't. I may never totally like finish sort of teasing all that out and like sort of pulling all the individual threads out to work with them. Um, but like my insides are important enough to me, right? That's like I want to try. My life is important enough to me. I'm important enough to me. I mean, shoot, I've invested a shit ton of money in like my own therapy, a lot of time and energy, that I've given to like trying to invest in my healing. Um, which interesting. I mean, just as an aside, has really like that's really been a helpful. That's really helped my insides feel loved. Not in that I'm like trying to prove something to myself, but it's a tangible demonstration of like, well, I've apparently learned how to matter to myself, like in ways that didn't used to feel true. Um, like I used to really hate myself, honestly. I used to say really horrible, cruel things to myself. Used to be very shaming to myself, and of course was super sensitive to feeling shamed and imagining that people are shaming me, whether they were or not in actuality. Um, but my persisting, with seeking healing, my persisting with working with helpers, with counselors, pastors, mentors, um, year after 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 year, we could keep going, right? Um, like it is bearing really good fruit. Um, and so, my mornings are better than they've ever been. And I feel a great, like, contentment in one sense of like I don't feel discontent in the sense of like, oh, can't believe it. Like I'm not upset with myself in that regard. Like I'm not down on myself, but I am like curious. I'm like, I want to understand what this is about. Like I want to know these parts of me and I want to help them get what they really need. Because I don't sense that checking email is exactly what they need. Um, there's a time in my morning for checking email, and I'm slowly kind of working towards like where does that fit in my morning rhythm? Because there are things about where I need to check my email, especially on days where I have clients um and yeah, there can be scheduling related things, I need to know. And um so but it's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out where's that its proper place, and like where that feels good to all of me. So yeah, so my invitation to you, right, like is, I'm not trying to be. I know I've made jokes about our New Year's resolutions. Of just kind of, I guess laughing at all of us, right? Because I can succumb to those things too, like these things where we're like, I'm gonna do it, but and then we don't, right? We don't follow through or we don't stick with it. Um, and I guess I want to say it's okay, right? Like, if your New Year's resolutions have already fallen apart, um, if you didn't even manage to get started, right? Like wherever you are with that, like I want to offer a pivot. I want to offer this idea of, well, pick one of your bad habits. Again, I don't mean bad in a shaming way, but bad in the sense of it's a habit that doesn't quite feel in sync. It doesn't feel congruent to all of your system, right? Like the entirety of you can't say yes to this. There's parts of you is like, I don't feel crazy about that for whatever reasons. And again, there's a whole spectrum of our reasons that something doesn't feel like it's great for us. I want to invite you to see if you can turn towards that with some curiosity. If you can start to wonder, like, what is going on with this? Like, this area is really sticky. It's really persistent. There must be something for me to learn here. Not in just a giving up or resignation, like, well, I guess I'm just going to always check my email first thing in the morning. But to be like, what is there? What is it about that? What is it about that habit? Checking email or checking Instagram, that's another thing that I've done, which that actually is getting better for me. It's progress. Um, but yeah, like what's this about for you? Let yourself, and here's the thing, I've been asking questions about this a long time, and progress is happening, but it's slow. Like there's these subtleties, and I think there's different challenges about different stages of inner work. Like some stages are challenging because they're so freaking painful and they feel so impossible. Other stages are challenging because they're so subtle. And so it's like staying with the question and staying with the question and staying with the question, not in a mean way or an annoying way, but just in I want to unpack this. I want this area to feel like it's totally in sync as much as is possible. Um, like I don't want to be giving energy away to things that aren't actually really meeting the need or the longing. I want to get that dialed in, like really specifically. Um, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I hope this can be inspiring. I hope it can be encouraging. I hope it can be um, freeing in terms of places where you're struggling, right? Because I know you've got bad habits, because I've got them too. We're all in process. But yeah, I want to invite you to try to be curious about what can your bad habits teach you? Like what's the invitation there? What's the possibility there? What's something in that, what are these elements in this bad habit that like is trying to do something good and useful and healthy and life-giving for you, and yet it's not quite the right thing. It's not quite dialed in. It's not, because again, if it was, it would feel good to your whole system. Um, so yeah, hope that you'll have some fun, have some curious questioning and wondering, and ultimately I hope that you'll get to stick with it long enough to experience some progress. um, and sometimes it takes a really long time before it becomes noticeable progress, but progress will come. If you stick with it, it will come. um, so yeah, well, until next time, peace be with you.